Speaking about John Watts, who is buried right behind me over here. He was born here in Southport, although when he was born in 1854, it was actually still known as Smithville. It wasn't until after that it was turned into Southport. But anyway, his father was Samuel Watts, known as Greasy Sam, because he was a Republican judge in a time where most of the state was very Democratic. John Watts goes on to become a surfman in the United States Life-Saving Services. Now, for those of us who don't know what the Life-Saving Services is or what they did, well, it's right there in the name, right? They saved the lives of survivors of shipwrecks, and there are quite a few different ships that wrecked here off the coast of North Carolina, nicknamed the graveyard of the Atlantic, because thousands of ships have wrecked off the treacherous capes. So we have Cape Fear, we have Cape Lookout, as well as Cape Hatteras, and on the tail end, on the tip of all those capes, are called shoals that are underwater sandbars that shoot out for miles out into the middle of the ocean. The one here, the Frying Pan Shoals, goes about 20 plus miles all the way out into the middle of the ocean. So if you were sailing up in 15 miles out in 50-foot deep water and suddenly you're in 3-foot deep water, well, you're going to need anything in that vessel to get that water out, including a frying pan. Hence the name, the Frying Pan Shoals. You'll see some math, some historians say it looks like a frying pan, but I'll let you guys decide on which version you like to believe, right? But nonetheless, the Life-Saving Services surfmen had two different ways of saving the lives of the surviving people from those shipwrecks. The first one was to haul a Lyle gun out onto the beach, which is about a cannon up to the size of your knee. And the way that they'd haul it is they'd tie ropes around their waist and they'd use their bodies like mules, right? They'd literally pull that thing on the beach until they got as close as possible to that shipwreck. They'd fire off the Lyle gun, which is not a cannonball coming out of that thing. We don't want to injure the actual survivors, right? It's like a kind of picture a torpedo with a loop on the back of it, and they try and shoot it over the shipwreck so the sailors could then, and then roped around that loop was the rope connected to the beach, right? So the sailors aboard the wrecking ship would grab that rope and they'd tether it to the highest place they possibly could on that sinking ship, often the mast if it was still there, if it hadn't fallen down, right? Meanwhile, on the beach, they would use a kind of pulley system to send out the breeches buoys to that shipwreck. Breeches buoys is a life ring. Just like we all think, right? It's the thing you see at the pool, right? There's that circular life ring, but attached to that was pants. Was just some kind of linen pants, and each surviving sailor would then hop into those pants and they'd ride it like a zip line until they got to the actual beach. Now that was the method that was always tried if it was within 700 yards of the beach, because they just didn't, the other method, which they didn't want to do unless they really had to, was to launch the surf boat, right? That is exactly as it sounds. It's a 27-foot long boat, no motor in 1893, right? It is powered by the 7 surfmen who were rowing that thing out there. The keeper would be on the back with the 20-foot long steering oar, which they'd use all of their weight to push and pull and push and pull and try and keep that ship or that boat on line until they can finally get to that sinking vessel. That is the method that John Watts and his surfmen had to do October 14, 1893. When 1893 was a busy season for hurricanes. There were over 8 hurricanes that hit the North Carolina coast during that season. The one in October was a Category 3 hurricane. So when a lookout spotted a sinking vessel or a vessel that was quickly breaking up on those Frying Pan Shoals, the first thing that John Watts did was he signaled to the Oak Island life-saving station, where the keeper is a fellow by the name of Dunbar Davis. He signals to him, "We need assistance," right? They would use, the way that they did that was a huge flagpole with signal flags on it, right? So Dunbar Davis sees that flag. They're already on edge because the hurricane was around. So he sees the signal and he gets all of his surfmen and they all pile into their surf boat, where they tried not once but twice they tried to row that thing out there. Each time they were sent back, flying back onto the beach by these huge aggressive waves. Believe it or not, the government did not accept. We never tried. You had to try, or else you might be fired, right? But John Watts didn't give up. After those 2 times they're sent back, he finds a local tugboat captain and asks them, can you tug our surf boat out past those big breakers so I can go assist in saving someone's lives? The tugboat captain responds, no way am I putting my boat out there in that hurricane-ridden ocean. Meanwhile, though, John Watts and the 7 surfmen who were at the Cape Fear station, they successfully get their boat past those big breaking waves, and they're on their way rowing at 7 a.m. to get out to the Charles C. Dane, which is quickly breaking up 8 miles in the Frying Pan Shoals. 8 miles out there, it took them 8 hours to row through those waves, where they eventually got to that ship that is quickly breaking up. They're able in 10 minutes to get a line on board of that breaking up ship, and they saved all 8 of those sailors. They got them off the sinking ship onto their surf boat, and then proceeded to row. The way back was a little bit quicker. They rowed 4 more hours to finally get back to the beach. So 12 total hours it took them to save all of the lives of the sinking ship there from the Charles C. Dane. But that is exactly what they did. They saved all of those sailors, brought them back to shore. John Watts continues to be the keeper of the Cape Fear Life-Saving Services Station until his death, while still appointed in 1911. Eventually, the Coast Guard, eventually the United States Life-Saving Services goes underneath the umbrella of the Coast Guard, but one has to think about the motto of the USLSS, which goes back to a story of an old keeper who was sitting there looking at a ship that was quickly breaking up in the middle of a treacherous ocean with a young surfman. And the young surfman looks at him and says, "Sir, do you think we'll come back alive?" The keeper takes out the manual, scrolls through it, skims through it, right, looking all around, and says, "Son, there's nothing in here that says we have to come back alive. The only thing it says is we have to go out." That became their motto. You don't always come back in, but you have to go out. And they went out that day and saved everyone they possibly could, October 14th, 1893. Thank you, everyone.